Israel is racing toward a dark legal turning point. Today, its Knesset prepares to vote on a bill that mandates the death penalty for Palestinian prisoners based not on evidence alone, but on alleged motives like hatred or harming Israel. With Netanyahu's backing and far-right Minister Ben-Gvir driving the agenda, this is less about justice and more about political survival and collective punishment. Condemned globally as a breach of the Geneva Conventions and labeled a war crime by Palestinian and international voices, the bill codifies what critics call state-sanctioned lynching. As Gaza counts over 68,000 dead and 81 prisoners die in custody since October 2023, this law threatens to turn Israel's judiciary into an instrument of legalized vengeance, erasing the line between courtroom and battlefield. Welcome to Think Tank.
Our world is becoming unhinged.
The Palestinian Chronicle has reported that the Israeli army's legislative body, the Knesset, has approved a draft bill for execution of Palestinian detainees. This dangerous far-right escalation was pushed by Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir's faction and reportedly received a direct green light from Premier Benjamin Netanyahu. This deeply controversial measure is a clear violation of established international law. Palestinian groups have strongly condemned the proposal, labeling it a fascist act by the occupation and calling for immediate United Nations intervention to hold this potential war crime. The initiative arrives amidst a dire humanitarian crisis. 81 Palestinian detainees have perished in Israeli detention since October 7, 2023. This legislation further weaponizes the systematic brutality already faced by over 10,000 Palestinians held in prisons. According to the Middle East Monitor, the Israeli army's legislative body, the Knesset, has advanced a grave bill allowing the execution of Palestinian detainees, a move widely condemned by Palestinian factions. This escalation, reportedly backed by Premier Netanyahu, seeks to formally legitimize the killing of detainees under official legislation. Palestinian resistance movements, Hamas, denounced the bill as a serious war crime and part of escalating Zionist fascism. The warn it is a dangerous precedent threatening thousands of lives, aiming to mask systematic abuses like torture and medical neglect in Israeli prisons. This legislative pursuit demands immediate international attention. Hamas has urgently called upon the United Nations and global rights bodies to intervene, block this dangerous law, and launch commissions to investigate the reported atrocities and degrading conditions within Israeli detention facilities. In a move sparking global outrage, Israel's Knesset advances the bill mandating the death penalty for Palestinian prisoners, legitimizing executions under a law critics call state-sanctioned lynching and a blatant war criming.
In a move condemned globally as legalized lynching, Israel's National Security Committee has cleared a bill mandating the death penalty for Palestinian prisoners convicted of killing Israelis, regardless of role, intent, or evidence. Driven by far-right Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir and backed by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the bill is less about justice and more about political survival. With elections looming, it appeases extremist coalition partners while framing resistance as terrorism worthy of execution. But this isn't new law. It's codified violence. Since October 7, 2023, 81 Palestinian prisoners have died in Israeli custody. Now, the state seeks to legitimize what it's long practiced extrajudicial killings under the guise of procedure. International law is clear. The Fourth Geneva Convention prohibits collective punishment and protects civilians under occupation. A mandatory death penalty based on ethnicity or political motive. That's not justice, it's a war crime. Palestinian leaders call it genocidal. The OIC demands intervention. Yet without binding UN action or ICC prosecution, the world risks normalizing state-sanctioned murder. If Israel can legislate death, the world must legislate protection. Because behind every clause in this bill are real cells, real names, and a generation watching whether humanity still has a conscience.
And to provide more analysis, joining us from Cairo, Dr. Khalid Dawood, Al-Ahram Weekly Managing Editor, and from Occupy Jerusalem, Ms. Ratiba El-Nacha, Palestinian National Action Committee member. Welcome to Think Tank, and it's a pleasure to have you both with us and for giving us your time and adding value to today's program. Dr. Dawood, we start off with you. Does Netanyahu's support for this death penalty bill reflects a shift toward judicial fascism, or is it purely coalition blackmail by Ben-Gvir ahead of looming elections?
Well, thank you, Rana, for having me and for your guest from Ramallah. Allow me, first of all, that this kind of legislation that's supported by Netanyahu and presented by his extremist terrorist minister Ben-Gvir just comes a few months before an expected election in Israel. So probably Netanyahu thinks that this will boost his chances among the growing right-wing support within the Israeli society itself. Because let's not forget, that this kind of bill basically strips Israel of its, last claim in front of the outside world that it represents a democracy and a state that respects human rights. Although all its actions since the beginning of the occupation almost 80 years ago confirmed that this is a racist regime that uses all means to discriminate against those Palestinians who live under Israeli occupation. And it might sound a little bit ironic that they consider it a step forward in Israel, this right-wing government, that they're going to legislate the death penalty for Palestinian prisoners, while they are already continue to kill Palestinians in Gaza on a daily basis and killing a total of nearly 17,000
Sorry to interrupt you in this context, but in the light of a ceasefire, of course it's a fragile ceasefire, but all of this is taking place in light of a ceasefire that's supposed to be taking place, no food, no humanitarian aid, killing of Palestinians every day. And at the end of the day, what's happening, sir? Is this humanity?
Well, I think, again, Netanyahu is basically, basically showing his carelessness towards the entire world public opinion that has condemned him as a suspect war criminal following the 2 years we've witnessed in Gaza. And he's again trying to enforce new realities that he wants to impose after the ceasefire. I won't say the end of the war, after the ceasefire was reached. But let me, Rana, remind you that at the same time this law was being passed, but we are seeing this controversy inside Israel over the leak of a video from within the Sderot concentration camp, let me call it this way, that was built after the beginning of Gaza war, and in which, the controversy is not over blaming soldiers who've been seen raping and torturing a Palestinian detainee, but it's
and the
been
one, sir,
about the
that was
leak of the
responsible and
video.
reported was fired.
Exactly, she was fired, but it's also what was like pretty, astonishing and like angering for me at the same time is that the argument is not about the acts of the Israeli soldiers who've basically done massive damage to this Palestinian prisoners. On the contrary, these soldiers are holding a news conference asking to be totally freed of all charges because they were allegedly carrying out their job. And that the leak of the video is what basically harmed their own reputation, not the act of torture. So, I mean, this is kind of reflective of the tendencies within the
Mr. Khalid,
Israeli
I just
society
want to interrupt you in this context and ask you, they are saying, the soldiers, that they were doing their job. So they were asked to do this?
Again, that's their own interpretation of how their job is. But again, that's a kind of a regime that sat on top of, a whole set of war crimes, not just limited to the relentless, indiscriminate bombing of Palestinians over 2 years, but even using food as weapon of war, medicine as weapon of war. I mean, imposing a famine-like condition against the Palestinians in Gaza, all this under the claim of protecting their own security. And the result was the entire international community almost right now see Israel as a pariah state that has no respect for any human rights. And this latest bill that you're referring to further confirms to the international community that we're facing a racist occupation that definitely has to come to an end by putting pressure on the Israelis themselves, not just to bring them to ignore passing this law, but also by bringing into practice the Trump plan that ends up with the creation of a Palestinian state in which Palestinians would be treated as equal human beings on their own homeland. That's basically what we need on the short and medium terms, because Israel has already been carrying all sorts of crimes against Palestinians since the creation of the state in 1948.
Ms. Nacha, Palestinian prisoners are already dying from torture and medical neglect. Does this bill, that I cannot call a bill, simply legalize the extrajudicial killings Israel has long practiced in secret? And why does Israel need secrecy at this point when Israel is already doing whatever it wants to do, killing whomever they want to kill, bombing, atrocities and genocides in Israel and out of Israel and everywhere, and they don't care?
This is what it means, that the whole society in Israel is a method or a way using cleansing,
ethnic cleansing,
yes, and apartheid towards the Palestinian. This much of violation of the Palestinian rights doesn't come just from this government. It comes from the whole Israeli community and the Zionist movement by its ideologic thinking and program in Palestine. So we can't talk about a normal country that needs laws to influence these laws for justice or something like that. It's just a movement and ideologic movement that believes that it needs to kill or transfer all the Palestinian from this land so they can be exist. It's like our exist or their exist. So in this way,
they've been killing them for the past 2 years. They've been killing them.
They need to improve for the society, the policy making in Israel. They need to improve for the society, the Israeli society, they are still in the same path, and they are doing everything to make sure that no Palestinian will exist.
This is not everything,
in the state of Israel.
As a Palestinian you're a Palestinian that I am interviewing now, This is based on the words of our team here and our editor-in-chief and the team of Think Tank. This is Israel racing toward a dark legal turning point. It's dark for Israel. It's not dark for the Palestinians. Palestinians are already dying and killed, and they don't eat, and no humanitarian aid, and there's nothing been done about it. And everything that's been done about it, actually, Israel stops and violates and does not continue. They took the bodies of the Israelis and then they started again bombing Gaza. There's nothing new about Israel.
I actually, what I'm trying to say that legitimizing these kinds of actions and violation, it's a way of improving for the Zionist movement and the Israeli community, that the leaders in Israel is still in the same track of making sure that there will not be any existence for the Palestinian. So I'm talking about a leader like Ben Gvir that believes that the God will not be done on earth unless they killed all the Palestinians. So making a proposal for the Knesset for killing the Palestinian prisoners, it's just one kind of showing off for his ideologic thinking towards the Palestinian. Yes, we know that by de facto, Israel is really violencing and punishing and torturing the Palestinian prisoners, and they killed so many of them, not just inside the prison, but even outside. And we witness a lot of cases that they killed handicaps, they killed children and people in the streets, because they have suspicions that they may make any kind of actions against the Israeli. It's not like they go through a trial and then they have evidence that they make harm for the Israeli to kill them. They already killed them on the streets. So what is the aim of this kind of proposal is just to improve for the Israeli community, and they are very near for the next. There are still much of will to kill more Palestinian and to kill the picture of
Ms.
victory
Nacha, I'm very
that
sorry
the
to tell you.
Palestinian
I'm very sorry to tell you in this context that if Israel is trying to show any trajectory, the only thing on my behalf that I have to say this today, that Israel is not showing any strength, but only they are cowards. Go on, Ms. Nacha. Dr.
Actually,
Dawood?
again, we are talking about a normal body, a normal country, a normal society, that they come together for a purpose. It's not for living in peace with the neighbors, but
okay,
they feel
Ms.
that
Nacha,
everyone in the neighborhood is a threat for them.
I'll come back to ask you, where is the international community, although the international community has been working very hard in the past period, at least in the last month. It's been working very hard. Dr. Dawood, how does this motive-based mandatory death penalty expose Israel's long-standing system of militarized injustice against Palestinians under occupation?
Well, again, Rana, to be honest, I mean, one of the aspects of the racism and apartheid system that Israel has built has been its judicial system that applies two kinds of laws, one for Palestinians and one for Israelis, because, all the rights are being given to the Jewish residents of Israel, while Palestinians are being treated as second-class citizens. They are not allowed fair trials. Even their lands are being taken by court orders. Their torture is being legalized by court orders, as Mrs. Nacha said. But again, this kind of law basically exposes Israel in front of the world when, people start asking, why are Palestinians carrying out acts of resistance against the Israeli side? I mean, this is just one example of how Israel deals with their Palestinian lives with total carelessness. I mean, and further seeking to revenge against Palestinians by killing more and more among them without any sort of fair trial like we have seen throughout the past 80 years in the Israeli justice system. So basically now the world can see for themselves. We've already seen Israeli
Mr. Khaled,
National Security Minister Ben Gvir.
I see from my own point of view, and of course it's your word, but I see that this is failed propaganda because they're doing all of this already. Why a bill? Why Knesset? Why Ben Gvir? Why all of this? Why is this happening? They don't have subjects to discuss.
Rana, it's the same Ben Gvir who was basically, making himself proud to show how the Palestinian prisoners are being forced with the faces to the ground and handcuffed from behind, and the way he invaded the cell of Palestinian Fatah leader Marwan Houthi to threaten him, and how he has basically taken pride since he took office more than 2 years ago as National Security Minister that has been torturing Palestinian prisoners, preventing them from getting the proper portions of food, they're reducing the number of visits they can get from their families. So basically, at the end of the day, we're facing the most fascist, racist government ever in Israel's history. And that's one key reason why Palestinians continue to resist this illegitimate occupation. And I was hoping that the American government, led by President Trump, when they speak repeatedly about the atrocities being committed by Hamas, that they would also look at the atrocities that are being committed by the Israeli side, whether through the arbitrary killing of Palestinians like we've seen over the past 2 years, or the imposing of the siege on the entry of much needed humanitarian goods. And lately, even when we look, Rana, at the handover of the Palestinian bodies compared to the Israeli bodies that are being handed to Israel by Hamas, Israel returns bodies without any names, without any identities, and they get buried collectively without the proper salute from their families, while the Israelis, they have all the advanced technology, and they threaten to continue to punish the Palestinians in Gaza, that they will not open up the corridors for humanitarian aid until all the remaining bodies of the Israeli 6 or 7, are returned back to Israel. So it's a reflection of the state of the Israeli society, and not just the states of its government that's now tolerating all sorts of racist and violent practices against the Palestinian people living under occupation.
Perfect, sir. That's shame on Ben Gvir, and shame on the Israeli government, and shame on Israel, on Benjamin Netanyahu. What's happening and what's taking place, and I don't think such a bill at this point and at this time specifically has any reason. Dr. Khaled?
Yes, I didn't hear the question. Sorry.
Okay,
There was a problem with the
I'll
sound.
move on to Ms. Nacha. With over 10,000 Palestinians imprisoned, Ms. Nacha, including children and women, how does this law threaten not just individuals, but the very fabric of Palestinian society?
Actually, by this law, they will not change the mind of the Palestinian society as well. Yes, they are trying maybe to remove the picture of the hero for the Palestinian prisoners, or maybe to afraid the people from taking any kind of actions against the Israeli. But still, through decades, these policies didn't change the Palestinian who are defending their rights and looking forward for independency and freedom. As I want to say now that I am not participating via Zoom due to the checkpoint. I was in a meeting 5 minutes.
It's true, Ms. Nacha.
Yes, it's. Yeah,
because you have
it's
no
5
internet.
minutes away from my home, and now I need like 2 hours to achieve my home just because they close the checkpoints. This kind of collective punishments, more than 1,200 checkpoints in the West Bank, arresting children and having children in home attendees as well. It's like it's all policies to make the Palestinian pay for this system, this apartheid system, and this ethnic cleansing system. But still, the Palestinian will not change their mind in recognizing their identity and fighting for their freedoms. So I know these kind of laws or these kinds of propaganda or these kinds of agenda will not go through the Palestinian people and will not kill their dream. And they try a lot of policies through these decades. Until now, we are
Palestinians
exist
were
on our
not waiting for
homeland.
this bill to add to anybody to stop their resilience, to stop saying and day and night that this is our country and this is our land and we're not leaving it, despite the death of 68,000 Palestinians in 2 years. When one Israeli soldier dies, it's the end of the world. But this bill doesn't make any sense to me and Dr. Dawood. With over 68,000 Palestinians killed in Gaza and 81 prisoners dead in custody since October 2023, could this bill legally cement collective punishment as state policy?
Well, it's definitely, Rana, an escalation in the Israeli measures taken against Palestinians living under occupation, continuing, to threaten the entire Palestinian population that they will be deprived from their basic rights as long as they continue to resist occupation. There is no question about that. And of course, we cannot ignore the internal election factor at a very critical time for the Israeli Prime Minister. The Israeli Prime Minister has been intentionally dragging the war against Gaza for a very long time, almost over 2 years, because he was aware that the minute this war stops, he's going to face accountability, whether on his own failures to prevent the October 7th attack or because of the corruption charges that he's facing. So right now, one way to satisfy his own base and maybe to distract attention away from his own scandals and problems is to pass this kind of law. And let's, hope that there would be some wise, parties in the world that can put pressure on the Israeli government, led, of course, by the United States, in order to shelve this kind of law, because this was the initial reading. It's not a final law yet, so there remains room.
Mentioning the United States, Mr. Khair, what is the United States from this bill that suddenly showed up today?
Well, I hope that, the United States would adopt a position on this bill similar to the one it took when the Israeli Knesset also passed the bill when Vice President J.D. Vance was in Tel Aviv, declaring the annexation of parts of the West Bank to the Israeli territories. And at that time, the U.S. Vice President was very angry, and he said that this was intentionally made to humiliate him and humiliate the U.S. effort. I think that this bill on the execution of Palestinian prisoners should be treated exactly the same way, that this is an escalation that goes contrary to all the steps that the U.S. President has been taking since the agreement on the ceasefire on 12 October, hardly less than a month from now. Again, this is a very provocative measure that will definitely not help at all the ambitions of the U.S. president that more and more Arab countries would join the Abraham Accords or would normalize relationships with Israel, because that's our key problem, Rana, with the Israeli side. It's the Palestinian people and how they are being treated. If they continue to kill the Palestinian people, steal their land, violate their human rights, there won't be any Arab country, or for that reasoning, any world country that would accept normalizing and having a normal relationship with Israel. This is a big fallacy. Israel has committed massive crimes over the past 2 years, and now is the time to seek accountability, not to give the Israelis a green light to commit more crimes against the Palestinians.
Dr. Khaled, if Israel can legislate death, the world must legislate protection. Your narrative, sir.
I'm not sure I totally understood your question, but the Israeli, let's not forget, the Israeli Knesset has passed many racist laws, including ones that define Israel as only being a state for the Jewish people and being a Jewish homeland. And at that time, there were lots of outcry by the Palestinian community who live within the so-called 1948 areas, because they are allegedly considered to be full Israeli citizens, but at the same time, they're not being granted the full citizenship rights because of those kinds of Israeli laws. So racism against Palestinians is a cornerstone and a backbone of the Israeli kind of legal system. And unfortunately, without serious world pressure by world countries, topped with the United States, European nations, and international human rights organizations.
Dr. Khaled, I'm very sorry. I have to end up and ask Ms. Natsha, because I'm out of time, and of course you understand. Ms. Natsha, the bill targets those accused of harming Israel, a vague term that criminalizes resistance. Is this legal language designed to erase the distinction between combatants and civilians? In 10 seconds, please, because I have to wrap up seriously.
It's as if you are saying that the Israeli law consider that there is a civilian Palestinian. It's not like that. All
True.
The Palestinian in the eyes of the Israeli law is a terrorist. The existence of the Palestinian, it's for the Israeli community, means that they harmful for the Israeli community and the Israeli by itself. So it's not about any kind of violation that the Palestinian will take against the law to be targeted in this kind of laws. And maybe I must light a point that it's not like just this proposal is now on the table of the Knesset. They have tens of proposals such like that, starting from annexing the West Bank to the law that they vote already on it 2 months ago, that it's not allowing
Mrs.
any kind of Palestinian authority in the West Bank and Gaza Strip.
Ms. Natsha, if they vote on this bill or they don't vote on this bill, if they make a ceasefire or they don't make a ceasefire, the end is the same. They are the occupiers. They're making atrocities and genocides. They're killing the Palestinians, the children and the women, the civilians. They're banning humanitarian aid from entering Gaza. Israel will not change. Israel and the international community is working and doing its best. That was Dr. Khaled Dawood, the Ahram Weekly Managing Editor, and Ms. Ratiba Natsha, Palestinian National Action Committee member. Of course, I wished I could continue this discussion with you. Thank you very much for your valuable time and for your intellectual knowledge and for being with us in today's episode of Think Tank. If law becomes the weapon of vagueness, justice dies, and with it humanity is conscious. That brings us to the end of today's episode of Think Tank, which always evades the complexities of our changing world. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more updates here in Qnews Minute by Minute coverage.